I want to introduce Mr. Luke, who moved across the country, made an enormous change in your life externally and also internally after your diagnosis. And so I was hoping that you could just tell us about when you were diagnosed and the emotions that you went through after that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Amy. It's great to be here. And thanks to the Davis Phinney Foundation for having me. And also thanks to Dr. Cole, that a lot of what he said parallels my own story. So, and I'm sure with a lot of folks that are dialing in today. So my experience was fairly similar. It was the spring of 2016 when my then girlfriend, Jennifer, she noticed kind of a strange thing in my walk, that my arms weren't swinging. And maybe particularly after a workout, one of my arms would have a tremor to it. And we looked up what are kind of the hallmark symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And she said she would list them off, and I would say yes or no, or yes or no. And a lot of those were yeses. And we decided, well, we better go check this out. So similar to Dr. Cole, just went to the family doctor, and he said, well, I'm not going to rule anything out. Maybe you better go see a neurologist. So I was actually diagnosed on, believe it or not, James Parkinson's birthday, April 11th. Of all things, and similar to a lot of the folks on this call, the trajectory of my life changed on that day, of course. So in terms of emotion, I felt lost. I felt kind of scared of the unknown, not knowing a lot about the disease, and where it would take me, and what would happen next. And I think I lost some measure of self-confidence in myself and my abilities. And that sort of feeling, I guess, is where I started. And I can keep going on with that. But if you had other questions, I could field, or I could keep going, or respond to your questions.
I know I'm muted. So when we were talking, we talked about taking that first step and what that requires in terms of courage. So that first step of moving forward out of your old life and into your new life. Do you remember that moment when you decided to do that?
Yeah, well, so I had been working in Colorado, and I decided to leave my job in 2018. It just wasn't a good fit for me. And I thought I was going to live the rest of my life in Colorado, and that's where I would live out my days and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, we decided that as time went on, and I wasn't finding job opportunities that I wanted to, that other places started popping up on our radar. And North Carolina was one of those places that came up. And one day my wife sent me a text with a job opening for an aerospace company in Charlotte. And I thought, well, this sounds kind of interesting. Let's take a look at this. And so I applied for it, and they did a phone screen, and I flew out for an interview. And in a matter of just a few very short weeks, I made the offer. And so then we had a choice to make, and we decided that would be best for us to make a change. And it was a really big step. What may seem like a small step for others was a giant leap for me. So a very big change.
Were you worried at all about the job interview and disclosing or not disclosing?
I remember during the phone screen that my Cinemet had started to wear off after it was maybe an hour phone screen, and I hadn't timed it just right, or had too much protein beforehand or something. And so I'm sure people are familiar with this. Half of your brain is trying to concentrate and answer the questions in the interview, and the other half of your brain is trying to keep your body from shaking on the camera. So I distinctly remember that during one of the interviews, and then pause there. It was a while after I started the job in Charlotte. I didn't disclose my diagnosis for about 6 months maybe, and then recognized that it was becoming more and more difficult to hide my tremor while I was in the office, and decided to pull together my closest teammates and say, hey, this is what's going on. I've got this illness, and I manage it through medication. But every once in a while, you might see a tremor, and that's what's going on. And bless their hearts, all the people on my team said, okay, that's fine. now let's move on to the project. And that was it. So I'd really built it up in my mind as this very scary event and wondering what people would think. And they were all just very casual about it. Not that they didn't care, but they just sort of said, well, it doesn't change what we think of you. You're still our designer and we still have work to do. So let's get back to work.
And you're still working now, right?
And I'm still working there. Yes. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people who are working full time and managing symptoms?
I think the first thing to say is it's different for everyone. What Dr. Cole said was very interesting about the freedom that he felt. And that resonates with me is getting that feeling of freedom. The interesting thing was that maybe a month or so after I revealed my diagnosis was when COVID hit, and I've been working from home ever since for the last 14 months or so. And so on a Zoom call, it's actually a little easier to hide Parkinson's symptoms than being in an office across the table from somebody. So the people I told about the diagnosis at the time, that's sort of my circle of trust that hasn't expanded since then. I guess to answer your question, it's sort of a case by case basis, and I don't have any hard and fast rules for when to share your diagnosis or when not to.
It's interesting that you say that because I've been getting some inquiries from people who have not disclosed during the pandemic because Zoom is so much easier to hide it. And now that they're headed back into the office, everyone's wondering what to do and what to say. It's been an unusual. There's been a lot of calls in that area, so it's probably something we should talk about more. But so now you're over here. You're over on the East Coast. You made that big jump, and how was changing your medical practitioner process? How was that difficult?
Yeah, it was more difficult than I thought. I think that's one of those things that people don't necessarily take into account when they move from one community to another.
Yeah.
It's finding a new insurance agent for your car, a new dentist, a new family, a new primary care physician, a new movement disorder specialist, and all these things that you don't really think of. The first movement disorder specialist that I found just through a Google search of ones in the area, he was sort of a younger guy, meaning younger than me. And during my first appointment, I said, I'm glad I found you through my Google search. I'm glad to see you're kind of a younger guy. I can see us going on this trajectory together, this path together for the next 20, 30 years or so with you being my provider. And he said, well, thank you very much. That's nice of you to say, but I got bad news. I'm leaving the state and this is going to be our last appointment together.
Yeah.
So I had to start my search all over again, but I'm very content with the fellow I've got now.
I am, again, when you and I started talking about this, I'm a member of a gajillion Facebook groups for people with Parkinson's and other things, which I'm learning from all of you today is a really good way to get through this journey together. And the day that you and I spoke, a question came across one of the groups. I wish I remembered who said it, because it's a really good quote. And he said, for me, Parkinson's is turning out to be the result of a lifelong struggle for the freedom and safety to be my authentic self. Does that sound anything like what you feel too?
Yeah. Freedom, authenticity, safety, those are all kind of related in a relationship standpoint. You want to have that freedom to feel authentic, and to be. You need to have that safe space with whoever you're talking with to be authentic and reveal as much as you're comfortable revealing and being vulnerable, and that I think can lead to some freedom. So,
do you think you're a different person now than you were before your diagnosis?
I would say definitely in several different ways. Physically, obviously, there's been changes, and Cinemet has helped manage those symptoms. I think self-confidence is still an issue, and I'm certainly far from perfect. I deal with depression, and the exercise seems to help that. I try to do that as consistently as I can. But there's certainly things that have changed. As Dr. Cole mentioned, today is what we have. So I think it's sort of his comment about having one eye on the horizon, that that kind of resonates with me as well. Is sort of thing. Well, maybe that horizon isn't quite as far as we thought it was, and let's focus more on today. And even this morning, when my wife and I were watching some of the earlier speakers, and they said, don't put off that vacation that you want to take when you retire. Go ahead and enjoy life now. My wife always says, don't postpone joy. Let's get out there and take that trip, especially now that COVID is starting to get in our rearview mirror.
And you also had a great quote, which I didn't write down. Do you remember what it was?
It was
about respect and honoring, but not fearing, right?
Yeah, early in my diagnosis, as we researched what Parkinson's was all about, we decided that we will respect Parkinson's, but we're not going to fear it. Just sort of taking it head on, and understanding that there's doctors here to help. There's people, other folks within the tribe, as Davis likes to describe it. So we've got tools in our tool belt that we can use to fight against it. Certainly respect it, but you don't have to fear it.
I love that. And if there are other people out there, people in the audience who are thinking about making a big change in their lives like you did, what advice would you give them?
I think I'd start by saying life is short. You only go around once. So if you have any question, go for it. You don't want to have regrets. You don't want to grow up to be 85 years old and say, doggone it, I took too many chances with my life, and too many things. I think it's good to take those chances and not have regrets.
Is there any advice that you would have given yourself, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I'd start by saying, although currently Parkinson's isn't treatable, it is manageable. So relax, Luke. You're going to be okay. You don't have to panic. You either keep exercising or start exercising to slow the progression, and then live, love, and be grateful for what you do have. Today is what we have.
Yeah, we have some points on the PowerPoint side. I don't know if we can bring that up again. That are drawn from sort of Luke's experience and the different ways of looking at having Parkinson's. And we talked a little bit about this before, which is, I read a lot about what people say on their deathbed. There's a lot of books out there, right? Because you're talking about regrets, no regrets life, right, Luke?
Yeah.
And from my reading, which of course was not an academic study, it was just me reading a few books, but from my reading, these were the top 4 regrets that people say at the end of their life. I wish I wasn't so hard on my loved ones. I wish I'd let myself be happier. I wish I had the courage to pursue my dreams. And I wish I had slowed down and not worked so hard. And those struck me really, really deeply, especially the one about letting yourself be happier.
Yep.
And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Is you're just giving yourself permission to not stress and just enjoy the moments that you maybe flew by before, right?
Right. Yeah. Even something as simple as sitting down for a meal. When you go to a restaurant, you go to your favorite restaurant, you order your favorite meal, and then you wolf it down, and the moment is over in about 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm trying to get myself to just slow down and enjoy the moment and relax and enjoy every morsel, every bite, and just enjoy.
Savor, yeah. To savor. And part of the post-traumatic growth concept, which really just means that something that's been known forever, is that when people go through a difficult time, whether that's trauma or other kind of struggle in your life, that they can change and that change can be good, not necessarily always just damaging. They've known about that forever, but they're just starting the research on why that is. And they took a look at these mindset shifts, which is your life can get better in these areas. Your relationships get stronger, which I think, Luke, you were describing that a little bit too. And then sitting down and savoring your dinner, right? Great appreciation of beauty and joyful moments. I have found post-diagnosis that the moments in my life where I feel happy are scaled way up. I'm not saying that there's more of them, but the level of joy and happiness that I feel is sort of like off the charts now because of, the gratitude, I guess, that comes in.
Yeah.
And the catchphrase, I know I keep talking about catchphrases, but the catchphrase for post-traumatic growth is this. It is, I am more vulnerable than I thought, but much stronger than I ever imagined. And I also think that it's that awareness of your inner strength that gives you the power to feel good, right?
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. Going back to the first bullet point under the one about relationships get stronger. I would even add as a sub bullet new relationships that you never thought you'd have. People that I met through the Parkinson's community are just tremendous people.
Aren't they the best? I know.
Yeah. And they're people I probably never would have met otherwise. And I'm just so grateful for this entire new batch of friends that I've made.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound flip because I often do, but my occupational therapist who saved my life by being flip with this heavy topic said to me at one point, all the cool kids have Parkinson's, which is kind of like, yeah, they are. They're all, this community is just full of so many kind-hearted people, full of integrity and so much wisdom and so much to learn from. I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Yes.
Does anybody else have questions for Luke? Or Luke, do you have any ideas about what's next for you?
That's a great question. Continue to explore the Carolinas. We haven't really had a chance to do that since COVID hit just shortly after we moved here.
Yeah, getting outside, right? I mean, that's really important to do that.
Yeah.
What I think it's that book that Mel recommended, that nature book, which I promptly got, about how therapeutic it is to be out in nature. And a lot of us have been so shut in for the last year.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that too. The Nature Fix. Yeah, I have it. It's upstairs. Can people talk about how they told their kids? I can. Luke, kids, do you have cats?
We have 3 cats. We never did tell them about the diagnosis, but I don't think it mattered.
I'm sure that they knew it beforehand.
They probably did. They're pretty smart.
I can talk a little bit about how I told my kids. They were in middle school at the time. I can't remember what ages, maybe 10 and 12 or something like that. I told them right away. I sandwiched the bad news with positive news on either side. And I showed them examples of people who have had Parkinson's and have lived a long time. Someone who inspires me a lot is Janet Reno. She was diagnosed in her very first year as the Attorney General of the United States. And she spent another 9 years in that role. So you can imagine how stressful that job was.
Yep.
And if you ever watch the Saturday Night Live skits where Will Ferrell, I think, plays her, and it's the Janet Reno dance party, which reminds me of all of the dancers here. It's really funny. Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think being honest and being showing them that you're still their parent, you know,
Yeah.
in a confident way. And just again, I think I said at the beginning, I think you owe it to your family to enjoy the moments. That helps them.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, I think it's a lot harder on our loved ones than it is on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
To watch this. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times you forget when you're diagnosed, it's almost as if they got a diagnosis at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if anybody else in the audience has anything to say about telling your kids, I think that's a really important topic of conversation as well.
Yeah.
So Carol's asking, how does humor play a role in your everyday lives?
Oh, hey, Carol. Luke's got a dry sense of humor. It comes out very subtly, but it's perfect.
Yeah. I think I think I use humor in two ways. Number one is as a stress deflector, and number two, to build relationships or start relationships. I probably come across as somewhat quiet at first, but as soon as I'm comfortable, I'll let out some of the worst jokes you'll ever hear. So
yeah, and that helps.
And that helps.
And Carol, who we all know as our ambassador, who wrote her great book, A Ribbon of Road Ahead, about walking the Camino. Also, I know she uses a lot of humor in her book and in her life, and I appreciate that as well. It's one more thing about this community that I really like is that kind of like going through a bonding experience together, and I hate to call it gallows humor, but something along those lines is a real bond that we all share, and I think it really helps.
Yeah, I agree.
And we are at 2:40, so I think we're taking a little break here. If anyone has any, actually, there's one question for you, Luke. I think is a really good question. Is there a checklist you have to assess a new movement disorder specialist or neurologist? Things that you learned when you had to start over to look for a new one?
No is the short answer. If they're board certified, that seems to carry some good weight. I think for me, it was important that they're easily accessible. So if it's a 3-hour drive, you're less likely to go make an appointment there. But if they're within your area, certainly that makes a big difference. And other than that, I felt like it was a little bit of a crapshoot to figure out, if you're going to get along with this person and if they're going to talk on the same level as you, if you can establish that relationship. But I'm sorry, I don't really have a checklist per se.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have a checklist, right? There's so many different styles of neurologists. I've been through 3 so far, and they have wildly different styles.
Yeah.
And I think it's another area of advocacy that would be really helpful, especially after hearing Dr. Zavika talk about how good a treating neurologist can be when they're really focused on custom prescription and treatment. Yes. And that would be fabulous if we had a unified system of neurologists who did that.
Yeah, I do have one very quick funny story. In my first visit with my new movement disorder specialist was over the phone. It was a Zoom call over the phone, and he wanted to see these typical exercises, how well you do with those sort of things. And part of it was a toe tapping exercise. So I held the phone pointing down at my feet. And before he asked me to start the exercise, he said, "Hey, did you guys get that rug from Wayfair? Because we've got the same rug in our house." And it was just a great way to break the ice. And I knew from then on that this guy, he and I are going to get along just fine.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
I love hearing your story because there's always that temptation to sort of just like start something big and something new, and you've done it. And so it's very inspiring.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate the opportunity.